Stay tuned for another episode of the Coming Soon podcast with sPidA.
Hello, everybody. sPidA here, Coming Soon podcast. Of course, once again, here in San Antonio, Texas. My guests, and I didn't even ask where you guys were at, but I mean, Alix, Austin, and of course, Keith, Siewert. Where are you guys located at?
So we're usually both based in London, but Keir's up in Scotland at the moment.
Yeah, I'm visiting my mom, so I'm up in Scotland at my mom's house actually at the moment.
But we live together.
Okay.
Normally, I would be to where Alix is right now.
No, not a problem. But thank you guys for jumping on this. Of course. Now the film. I mean, we're gonna get into the film. Kill Your Lover. Well, so of course, strong words for a strong film. I mean, I was able to watch the trailer. Very powerful. You know, I'm curious as far as I mean, because obviously you guys have been working together for years. So how much of this is fictional and nonfiction? I mean, because of course you guys wrote this, so I'm curious to see where the storyline came from and who threw in what as far as the film.
Well, in terms of what's fictional and non-fictional, we might need to keep some of those a little bit secret. You know, can't maybe let everything out of the bag. You know,
it's not so much our lemonade, if you will, but there's definitely some intense stuff that's ours, and then some bits that we've cribbed from other people's relationships. But we definitely were aiming to kick the door in with this film to sort of say, hello, we're here, let's chat.
No, for sure. And of course, I didn't mean as far as you guys, but I mean just through life, because of course, I mean, you have friends that might feed something on you, be like, hey, this is what's going on. I myself, I mean, this film, I watched the trailer and I was thinking to myself, I've been in some pretty toxic relationships, and this topped it. This was like, compared to what goes on in this film, my relationships have been pretty good, So, but yeah,
I think we definitely say that probably like the vast majority of kind of like stuff comes from some sort of like specificity, and we were definitely looking to try and make sure the relationship felt like not just generalized, but had like a lot of like sort of like small specificities to it that kind of just made it feel a little bit more lived in, as opposed to just the kind of generic movie relationship. No,
yeah, I mean, I agree, because I mean, from the soundtrack, I mean, some of the things that I look at, especially when I watch a film, especially the trailers, because I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me see. I'll watch the trailer and I'll watch the film, of course. But it's the soundtrack, the character, the strength of the characters, because of course, this was very realistic in a sense where I'm watching it and I'm thinking, okay, like, I've had friends too that confide in me, and they tell me like, man, this, she did this or he did this, and I'm thinking, man, like, those are the kind of relationships you want to avoid. But I mean, the story on this is actually great. I mean, when it was time to finally edit the film, I mean, how much would you say was left out of it? Because of course you guys only have so much time, right?
Yeah, I mean, can I just say that I'm so happy you mentioned the soundtrack, because we're so proud of our collaborator, Thibaut Chavanis, who did the soundtrack. It's actually available on Spotify and all your favorite platforms now if you want to check it out. But that in and of itself was like sort of like the constant through the film. Like, it brings so much to it. But in terms of, sorry, remind me of the question.
No. I mean, but just saying, just in general, because of course, I mean, the strength of the characters. I mean, the fact that you guys obviously were able to throw back and forth and say, hey, what about this? Or, oh, you know what? I mean, the editing, of course, like I was saying earlier, the editing. I mean, I'm sure you guys had to cut off quite a bit. I mean, if you would have run everything, how long would this movie have been?
Well, that's the interesting thing. I mean, we were very purposeful with what we shot, so we didn't actually leave very much on the editing floor, on the cutting room floor. If anything, I think there was one point where we cut the film too short almost, because we were still in that short film mindset, right. And it was like an hour, and we were like, or like 70 minutes, and we're like, this is too short. Like, we need to let it breathe a bit. But we had a lot of a lot of it was scripted, but we also had some improvised material around the fights, because we just had a really good time working with our actors, and they came up with some more material. So they brought some of themselves into the film as well in that sense. So those improvised moments were the only things that were really cut. And then there was like one tiny little 30-second scene that we cut, which was just a pacing issue where we thought, you know what, we just need to get to the fireworks factory now and have the paramedics like look at stuff.
But it's interesting too, because like, so I mean, with say like the improvised scenes, it was a case of we would literally give the actors like prompts like, okay, you're fighting about this and this is why you're upset, and then we'd get like 5-minute takes of them just like improvising arguments. We'd be running like 2 cameras, and then we'd go again, but we get like footage that was kind of disorientating and kind of fractured, and then we get like slow motion footage, and then so that we could kind of combine them all into this kind of a kaleidoscopic kind of crazy sort of like montage. And so the process of editing that was really tricky. Like that's like, you could have just made a really, really long, crazy art movie that was just that. And I mean, I don't know what people would get out of it, but you could have made a lot out of it. Right. So that's probably a lot of the material that sort of like ultimately ended up on the cutting room floor. But yeah, as Alix sort of said, we're very purposeful with a lot of our other sequences.
Okay, well, it's pretty interesting that you guys allowed your actors to actually throw their own feedback, because of course a lot of times, and I've interviewed directors where they have a sense to where, okay, this character is going to be as far as like a bad guy, and it just turns out they bring a lot more comedic into it, that they change the role, and they're like, well, you know what, we're going to go ahead and make him a little bit more fun. So things do change, but I mean, of course, you guys had your storyline. I mean, that had to stick, but the fact that you allowed them to actually improvise, because I'm sure a lot of that was, personal feelings, they kind of just threw stuff out there and went with it.
Well, I mean, I think Alix and I can both say that the mantra of this film production was, know when you have to pivot, and we did an awful lot of pivoting. And I think, like, especially in a movie like this, it's like you've got to kind of see what your actors can bring to these performances. Like, I would say that, like, we did a whole sort of like casting process to cast the lead, Dakota. Like, Shane is a close friend of ours. We've known him for like a very long time, so the role was kind of written for him. But Paige, who plays Dakota, was somebody who we found through the audition process. And the reality is, when you were looking at all of the different people auditioning, you were kind of like, well, whoever we cast, it's going to be their version of Dakota. It's not going to be the version that we have in our heads or the version that is just on the paper. They're going to bring something to it. I mean, Alix especially is from an acting background. So, I mean, you can speak to it even better than I can, but it's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of the process with actors.
I would say some of the most beautiful stuff happens on set. So you come in, we believe very much in fix it and prep. So you do as much preparation as you possibly can, but you also need to let things happen in the moment if it applies to that situation. So that was the real joy of being able to do those improvised scenes that one day, because you had crew members going, oh my God, they're really like going for each other and they know it's not scripted, and it felt very real, which was great to capture. But then on the other hand, we had some very intense, very technical days. So it was nice to give the actors some like free reign from that, because other days would be very much like, look here, your feet are lifting off the ground as the blood's dripping on the floor, very formalist filmmaking in that sense, because we had to storyboard the hell out of this because we shot it in 15 days. So, like, it was nice to have a mixture of everything, and that might not happen in every movie, but that we make, but we like to adjust to the project that we're currently doing, and it just worked really well for this one.
Well, I'll tell you something funny too. It's stuff like so for instance, at one point, there was a line in it where Dakota says to Axel, I like your butt. And Paige looked at me and went, I wouldn't say butt, I'd say bum. And I said, that's fine then, you can say bum.
Okay, yeah, you see things like that. I wouldn't catch personally. I mean, of course, I'm here in the U.S., but I wouldn't have caught that. But I mean, the fact that they're able to, kind of make it their own, and of course, I mean, that's pretty cool. That's one of those attention to detail. I know. I was interviewing a producer the other day, or a director, I'm sorry, and he was talking about guns and they're doing this big old, out in the UK, and my question was like, man, are guns allowed in the UK? He was like, no, none of this would have happened, but it's just And it just, for some reason, that stood out to me because, of course, I mean, I'm here in Texas, and we all carry guns. It's just like the Wild West out here. But it was just one of those, like, I mean, if people kind of think about it, it's like, okay, that would have never happened, or it's just something that they had to write and make the movie believable.
Well, I'm just speaking for what I know about UK gun culture, or lack thereof, is gun safety is taken so seriously here. Like, it's very intense. So even when I was at drama school, I think we had a prop gun that was made of rubber. It was just like the outline of a gun, and even that you couldn't just carry casually down the corridor. You had to hide it. So there's like some really strong things put in place. So yeah, I think when it comes to believability, I think it just depends on what kind of world you're playing in, because of course there still are guns, and especially if you're dealing with criminal worlds and stuff like that. Also depends on if there's some kind of lo-fi sci-fi thing going on. But yeah, overall, knife crime is a much bigger thing here than gun crime.
No, for sure. And now let me ask you guys. Earlier, Austin, you had mentioned that the movie was shot in 15 days.
Yes.
So that was like the entire, or is it just like when you guys got to the main parts?
So I think the easiest way to explain it is there's the flashback scenes, and then there's the present day stuff that's happening. We kind of say it's like the romantic movie bits and the flashbacks versus the horror movie that was happening in the present day. So what we did is we shot for 4 days in August, and then we took a 2 to 3 month break and shot the rest of the film in November, which is when Shane grew out his hair and beard, and Paige dyed her hair to give that more strong contrast between the two, which was a huge production design benefit for us. And we also had a little bit more time to do the special effects makeup and get everything ready. So yeah, from that perspective, those were all principal photography days, but we didn't do any pickups because we got everything that we needed. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Now, again, I mean, when it comes to storytelling, because I mean, you guys wrote something magnificent throughout the years. I mean, you mentioned earlier as well that it wasn't. You kind of had to get out of that short film mentality, making when they came to editing. How has the experience been for you guys writing short films leading up to this?
I mean, I think it's really interesting, because I do think that in a weird way, we started out trying to make short films a bit too much like features. Like, we try to cram too much story in. It didn't really sort of function properly. And I think kind of a lot changed for us when we kind of started making short films that were built to be short films that told self-contained stories in sort of small packages. And it makes you learn a lot through that process of how are you doling out the best amount of information for the time period that you have. And I think the interesting thing was kind of like Alix said, is when we came to edit the feature, we were actually kind of still editing the feature like it was a short film. It suddenly became, we weren't giving characters enough time to breathe. We weren't giving the drama enough time to develop. So we actually had to kind of go back in and just sort of lengthen things out, calm sequences down, because they were almost too choppy, too quick. So it's that kind of thing of you do really sort of learn through the process of short films, how to tell a concise story. But it's very easy to get into this mentality of going, oh, well, when you make a feature, it's just going to be a long short. And it's not. You got to kind of it has its own kind of metrics and rhythms and pacing, and you have to really kind of take that into account.
No, you see, and of course, I mean, after when you guys wrap this up, because of course it's going to be available to us on June 7th. I mean, this is when it's going to be released. People can pre-order right now. But are you guys constantly working? I mean, is there another project already lined up for you guys for next year, or maybe even the start of this year, this last year?
We've got several feature films written. So we have 4 scripts that we've written, because we were like, you know what? Not waiting around. We need to be ready for the next thing as soon as the opportunities come up. So we're talking to some people. We have 2 feature films that are sort of in the early phases. So hopefully we'd be shooting one of those next year. It just depends on which one comes off the ground first. One's a fucked up baby shower movie, and one's Crank, if it was a werewolf movie.
Oh, nice. Okay. Now, and I was going to ask, I mean, as far as the genre, I mean, what is it that you guys are trying to stay around? Is it horror, or does it just depend on?
Just genre in general. I mean, I'm an action nerd personally, so I'm like any fighting that can be put into it, any like fast-paced sequences with tension. I don't mind what genre it is. It's just that horror is what we've gravitated towards more recently, and I just love practical effects as well. So I'm like, we can just do some goopy, gory stuff and like have the sound pounding everyone's eardrums. That makes me very happy. So if that's what ends up happening, then great.
Sweet, man. What about yourself, man?
I mean, I think we're just kind of like, I think horror is such a kind of like a really sort of like rich tapestry to like play in, you know, and also, you know, especially I think we gravitate a lot to monster movies and the idea of like creatures and, you know, kind of like, and also just really sort of like body horror, the very like very physical, tactile sort of like horror. So I think we're very intrigued. But I think one of the reasons, say, like something like making a werewolf movie intrigues us, is it intrigues us like being able to like play in like you know, a sand pit that kind of already exists, because, you know, Kill Your Lover is a monster that we created. Umbilical, which is the movie Alix was talking about, that's happens at a baby shower where it turns into a massacre. That's kind of, again, more like a creature or a setup that we've created. But I think it's fun, the idea of taking like things that actually already exist, like a werewolf, and kind of being like, what's our spin on a werewolf? What could we do with a werewolf movie? So I think a lot of that sort of stuff excites us.
And anything that's like heightened, where
Mhm.
like things don't need to be too serious,
Right.
so that you can have fun with it while still talking about serious subject matters under the surface. Like, definitely, that's our jam.
Yeah, well, that's actually pretty cool. I mean, one of the things personally, when it comes to horror, is the fun that you know, with you guys, you can make it fun. You can make it pretty much whatever you want. You know, you can create your own spin, like, you know, like you had said earlier, and it just makes it more interesting because, of course, you know, I mean, I've seen plenty of, you know, werewolf movies, but you know, depending what you guys are gonna write and what spin it's gonna go, and you know, it's interesting because it's like, okay, you know what, I saw what you guys did, you know, with you know, Kill Your Lover, so I'm curious to see, you know, what the werewolf is going to be up to, you know, what the storyline is going to be, and then, you know, of course, what it ends up. So that's pretty sweet, man. I mean, you know, when it comes to writing, of course, let me ask you this. I mean, backtracking, when did this start for you guys? I mean, we'll start with Alix, of course.
So basically, the short answer, you know, always trying to be a bit shorter. Good writing, brevity is the soul of wit. Is 2021. Basically, we were at Fright Fest London, and we just watched a bunch of features, debut features, as well as you know, features that were coming out through the studio system. And we were like, you know what? I think we've been holding ourselves back. I think it's time to just get on it. And so we had already written some feature film scripts already, but they were all too expensive to be able to just make ourselves. And we were like, you know what, we should just try and make one, because if we can show that we can make one, then maybe someone will help us with the next one. And so, yeah, I mean, Keir and I wrote the script in, I think it was like 2 months, at which point we started sending it out to actors, and then we kept developing the script all the way up until we were shooting. And then, as you know, with the improvisation, we were very open to things being like, I guess you could say, embodied by the actors as well, so that it wasn't all just, you have to say it in this. We wanted a naturalistic performance. So the initial draft took 2 months, and then we kept developing it as time went on, right up until we were shooting in August of 2023.
Wow. And I think, you know, for us too, it was like we started off with it being about a zombie, and then as we kind of like went on, we found that a zombie itself was somewhat limiting. So we looked at how we could then continue to really underpin the emotional and the narrative and the characters through what was happening to the protagonist and the monsters that, you know, and the monster that the character of Axel is becoming. And like that made it richer for us. So it's like again, it's like that thing of us kind of going like, it's easy to start off and go, okay, we're making a zombie movie. But then as you kind of keep developing, you're like, okay, how can we tweak this? How can we find new ways into it? How can we make it a little bit more like creative?
And I think just to piggyback off of that, what we found so interesting, and why we were so happy that we continued to develop it as well as time went on is initially Axel was the monster and it was just good versus evil, if you will. Whereas the more we developed it, the more we realized that even though Axel turns into a monster, he's not inherently evil. It's the relationship itself to us that's the monster. So neither Dakota or Axel are inherently evil. It's just that they are creating a monster together the more they stay together. So yeah, it just kind of it really started just taking on more of an interesting spin as we developed it, and became a little bit more complex than even we were initially intending it to be.
Nice. Now, of course, earlier, as far as Stuart, he had mentioned that Alix, you were the actress. I mean, you're the one that's having done this and writing and being behind the cameras. I mean, the experience. I mean, obviously, it's helped. I mean, working with other actors and kind of trying to let them know, okay, you know what, this is what we need. Is it easier for you to communicate that with other people as far as actors?
So with this project in particular, because Keir and I were co-directors on this and we had very limited time, we decided to essentially agree on a vision up front. But the way that we divided up the work is very much what you might expect, where I was the main voice for the actors and Keir was the main voice for the camera department. So if Keir had notes about the acting, he would come to me, tell me, and then I would relay that to them, so that it was very clear who was whose person, if you know what I mean. So you could give people a little bit more attention that way as well. But there's definitely an element to which I think it's fair to say that I have a shorthand with actors, and I also find the work so interesting. And Shane, who plays Axel, was actually in drama school in the year below me. So I've known him for 10 years. So to be able to work with him on this project was a real joy. And then Paige and I just clicked really quickly as well. Like I could almost like by sort of the midpoint, I was able to give her notes from like across the room, just like with an eye signal. It was really funny. Like we tapped into each other's energies. And I think sometimes it's very easy for directors to treat actors like props, like wind them up and let them go. And a lot of them are really great at just being able to be brilliant, but I think there's so much more that you can get out of actors if you really take the time. So it was really nice to be able to do some of that.
One of the things that I really feel like I learned from the experience of working, with Alix as a co-director was, for me, a lot of the time, I'm looking at things from a kind of perspective of what's just like necessary in the moment. So it's just like that kind of thing of going, I need that person to walk over there, grab that thing and just like do this. And then, Alix is able to really kind of like oftentimes give that much more of a context as to what the character's reasoning and sort of like motivation for that is. And, I'm not saying I'm like completely incapable of talking to actors by any means, but it's really nice when somebody almost has a common language with actors in the way that Alix does.
He is actually much better with actors than a lot of other directors that I've worked with as an actor. He's very empathetic. There's a reason that we're together. Let me put it that way. But I forgot my point. Yeah, no, that thing that Keir was just talking about is people often like if someone's just being told to pick something up, it's going to look weird. Whereas if you tell them why they're picking the thing up or what the thing means to them, the easiest way into this is to say, okay, the scene's beginning. Where is the actor where's the character just come from? And where are they going to after the scene, so that they know what their journey is? Because no one just comes into a room and goes, okay, I'm going to have this conversation now, necessarily. They've got hopes and dreams and other stuff that's like maybe taking their attention elsewhere, which in turn gives them an inner monologue that's much more interesting than, oh, you have my full attention. And yeah, I hope that made sense.
No, that does. And that's one of the reasons I was asking, because of course, there's an evolution for a lot of people. I mean, when they starts to, they get into acting, later on, I mean, of course, they start writing, they start directing, or they start getting involved behind the scenes. And I think that's great, because as a person, I mean, you kind of, there's this thing that I say, and I always tell people, a lot of times you don't get to pick your part, or you don't get to pick what it is you want to do. It's kind of, it picks you. It decides, okay, you know what? This is what I prefer to be behind the camera. I prefer to be in front of the camera. And, it's just, it changes in time. A lot of actors of past, for example, a lot of them are directors now. They're writing, they're kind of like, they don't want to work, as hard. So they just kind of get behind the camera and just, do what they do. But I mean, for yourself, I mean, are you going to be back and forth as far as acting as well? Are you
Basically, I think the thing for me with the whole acting to directing thing is I definitely feel a lot more comfortable taking a little bit more charge of my own destiny in that way. And I think you find that there's a lot of actors who end up producing to take more control over like what roles that they are able to get.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, I mean, the cut and dry version of me saying it is probably to say I'm probably too much of a control freak to just be an actor. I have a lot of respect for people who can do that, but I think I'm too driven, too ambitious, and too much of a control freak, as said, to just kind of wait for things to happen. So I like to make things happen, and in like being able to provide cool roles, especially for actresses, which there still aren't enough of, I think has been very comforting for me in a way as well. As far as like going back into acting, I've been in and out. I do roles every so often, but what's really nice for me, I guess, is that I get to be choosy about what I do. But I'm honestly not against, like I keep saying to everyone, I'll play a dead body for you. I think that stuff is really fun. Like anything weird and wacky, I'm completely down for. Like I'd love to do some more character acting roles. But my focus is definitely mostly on filmmaking at the moment.
Right. And well, let me ask you that, because of course, you mentioned the werewolf movie. You're not going to be the one wearing the werewolf costume, are you?
Well, see, this is the thing. There are multiple wolves, so I might well end up being a wolf. You never know.
Nice.
But yeah, there's a very fun part in the pregnancy movie, actually. But I already have someone in mind for that. But if it wasn't that person, it would definitely be me in a bald cap, covered in blood, like as some crazy creature. Like I would definitely. I don't mind a bit of goop. Let's put it that way.
No, and of course, and it's fun. It's one of those things you get to actually, like you mentioned, working with props and special effects and costumes. It's got to be fun. Now, Siewert, man, as far as filming, I mean, of course, behind the camera, have you? I mean, on this one, you're co-producing, writing. Are you looking to get more involved in front of the camera, or is it just going to be?
Not unless somebody needs someone to stand in and do a Travis Kelce lookalike, because that's what I keep getting at the moment, is everybody keeps telling me I look like Travis Kelce. But no, actually, the funny thing I will say about Alix is that she is technically in the film. She's her hand appears multiple times. Oh, yeah. She also plays a dead body at one point. She's like because we did on the last day, we basically did just a day of like insert shots and kind of like small little mood setting shots. Like we had no actors there. It was just the two of us, the gaffer and the director of photography. And so all the hands, all the things, like I was Shane's shadow at one point, we passed in front of camera, things like that. So there's bits where we kind of have our own little small cameos in our own way in the film.
Yeah, our DNA is all over this. Like,
yeah, that's actually
from this movie. Too close to home, I don't know.
I was gonna say that's pretty cool, because a lot of times that does happen. I mean, there's a scene that you're like, oh man, we should have gotten this. I mean, a lot of times you got to throw yourself on there. I mean, of course, you guys couldn't, get the cast back in, and you decided, let's go ahead and finish this off. Get this done.
I will say, to be fair, it was a planned day. We just wanted to take our time with it. So we basically told everyone to go home. We were like, we just need the camera guy, and we'll just sort it all out. So yeah, thankfully we didn't need to do any pickups. This was just our dedicated, insert shot day, if you like, which was actually super enjoyable, and was a tip that we got given from another director, and I couldn't recommend more to other filmmakers, is just to take your time and like not rush those shots.
It's just basically us doing our own second unit, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, of course, I'm going to post the image real quick just so people can see it. But this is going to be the original motion picture soundtrack. Kill Your Lover. Of course, you mentioned the composer. Now, on this, is it going to be on stream only? Is it only going to be? I mean, are they going to release like a CD? I know most people don't collect them. I still do, but is it going to be in other formats?
Yeah, so it's digital at the moment, but we are doing a limited press. I know that Thibaut has that planned, so that's in the works for sure. So we'll have to stay in touch for sure, so that you can get your hands on one.
No, not for sure. Because I mean, let me say this, because of course, when you guys, did you guys give him the storyline? I mean, how did he come about coming up with the music? Because a lot of it went with the movie. I mean, I'm listening to it, and I'm thinking, okay, you know what? It was perfect. I mean, it fit the film.
I'm glad you think so. We actually had a really interesting process. We wanted to get Thibaut in as early as possible. We've been working with him for 7 years, so like he's basically like the third member of Switchblade Cinema in that sense. He's been with us. This was our 7th project together. So he said, "Oh, could you send me just like, I don't want to read the script. I just want to know about the characters." So I sent him a character breakdown. So he started getting some ideas from that. And then the punk rock influence from Dakota was like in there from the start, which is why you've got a lot of the guitars and the percussion. But I love like the industrial sounds that he's brought into it as well. And yeah, finding that love theme as well, that recurring like heart, I guess you could say, of the two of them and whether they're going to make it, and that push and pull. I think Thibaut spent a lot of time on this. Most composers spend like a month on a score, and I think this was so important to him. This was his feature film debut as well, so he spent a good 3 months developing this, and I really think it paid off. I'm glad it resonated with you.
No, yeah, because the music itself. I mean, when I first started watching horror films for myself, I started watching reruns from the 70s. I'm an 80s kid. Listening to 80s music, well, not music, but watching a lot of the horror films in the beginning, a lot of them had punk rock music, and I've said this one time and time again, like I was a fan of punk rock before I knew what punk rock was, because of the soundtracks. I was always listening to it, and years later in high school, I'm skateboarding, and my friends like, oh, listen to this album or whatever, and I'm like, dude, I know that song, like, so that was pretty cool, but yeah, I can definitely relate to the music. I mean, the whole industrial thing, I grew up with that as well, so it definitely it was my forte. I enjoyed it. I sat through it, of course, but it's just the fact that it went with the mood and what was going on with the film. I mean, I thought that was great, and that's one of the features that I love. When I watch a movie, I'm like, okay, you know what, that's the character build up. I mean, of course, but the music as well. I'm a music fan, so gotta enjoy it.
That makes me so happy to hear, man.
Now let me ask you guys, and of course, y'all are welcome. I mean, like I said, I did enjoy. I'm looking forward to future projects. Now, the fact that you guys, like you said, there's already films or write-ups as far as what you guys have written, movies coming up. What else are you guys venturing into? Is it only movies? I mean, I'm just curious. Like, are you guys maybe getting into not so much licensing, but actually making, you know what I mean, like being able to distribute, or maybe even like later on down the line, like be able to actually show films yourself?
I don't think there's any direct plans for us on that front, but personally speaking, this is just me, not me and Keir, because we were co-directing partnership. But as far as my own personal interests, like I'm very much a video game person as well, and I'm very interested in virtual reality immersive projects that have to do with sound. So that's definitely something that I'm looking into at the moment. So and excites me. But the main pursuit is definitely feature films. We want to make more feature films for sure.
Okay, cool, man. And what about yourself?
I love movies. I just want to keep making movies. Maybe I'd be up for making a TV show, but movies is the thing that I want to do.
Okay, you see, and the reason I'm asking is because, of course, I mean, the composer, I mean, he's in charge of the music, but I was just curious to see if you guys would be, as far as working with bands or music in the future, working with projects like TV or, I mean, commercials, as far as, whatever pays the bills, but of course, out of your own personal, like if you'd be interested in doing another words.
Yeah, I used to make a lot of music videos back in the day. So kind of like, I would, I'll always be down to go back to music videos.
Okay. Well, that's great to know, man. Of course. And let me ask. I mean, of course, you guys aren't in the States. When this stream is available, it's going to be streaming all over the world. I mean, have you guys been to the U.S. prior or before?
Well, I am actually American. So I grew up in New Mexico. My father's actually from
Oh, man,
Texas.
okay,
So
okay.
kind of like, my mother's Scottish though, so that's why I'm here. But yeah, so we've been to the States. We went to film premiered at Brooklyn. We went to Overlook with it. So kind of like, yeah, we love the States. So kind of like, yeah, hopefully we'll get more opportunities to come back.
Okay, and I was just curious to see, as far as like, I mean, if you guys were nervous about it once it's released. I mean, of course, it's going to be all over the world. I mean, is there a lot of pressure with that? I mean, just knowing that people everywhere are going to be watching this.
I think we're just super excited.
Yeah, it's so nice to like have it be coming out, and like we've obviously had some festival attention through it, but having it accessible to more people in that way, and hopefully like interacting with more people about it as well would be really cool. It's the whole reason we made the movie, so it's just awesome to have the opportunity to show it to more people.
I do think we're gonna have to head off though.
This has been amazing.
Yeah, it's been.
No, for sure, guys. But I appreciate you guys for your time. Of course, it was great talking to you. For those watching, of course, definitely make sure and watch it. This is going to be June 7th. It's going to be available at some selected theaters. So, of course, we'll keep up with that. But I thank you guys, man. I wish you nothing but the best, and I hope to talk to you all soon.
It's been awesome talking to you, man.
Thank you, Mario.
Thanks so much.
No problem. Everybody out there, of course. Once again, sPidA here, Coming Soon podcast. So next time, follow up.